Hello, hello, hello. Back from a remarkably May and June. Very busy. I'm sure you all were too. Hope you're listening. Looking forward to chatting to you. Bringing you the next episode of Two Irish Guys Discussing Software. It's our podcast. This is Tomás O'Leary, your host. Wow, where have we been? Well, we had our annual event on the 1st of June, which kept us busy getting ready and all the follow-up and activity post-event. It was our Empower event, where we're looking to empower you as the decision makers in your business to make better decisions. Well, this year's theme was being a healthy skeptic, something I'm thinking you've all heard us talk about on the show. Now, what I loved about this event is that previously we've done these kind of in kind of Zoom, Teams times models, and now it was an online event this time again, but this time we ran it with a live audience. So somebody suggested, one of our hosts on the day, Richard Beaumont, it was a Peloton style event. So ran really, really well. We were delighted to have it. Oh, wow, we had some great presentations, great discussions. I hope you can go and check it out and hear some of the things we talked about. But really, some of the things we really pushed, this healthy skeptic kind of concept, really we're talking about enabling IT leaders across all disciplines of IT to ask better questions. Really, we're talking to people is be more curious. This is what we're asking people to be. Ask better questions. Get out there. Don't accept the status quo. Why, we ask this question all the time here. Why software buying models, why do they only benefit one party? Why is there only one party that benefits from that? And it's never the buyer. It's never the buyer. We need to break down the walls that keep enterprise tech planning constrained. That is our problem. And these are the things we talked about. It feels like sometimes we are perpetually stuck in the present. So how do we get out of that? How do we move along? So lots and lots of conversations about that, which was really, really interesting. We had some of our some customers along. You'll hear some customers from Liberty Mutual. We've had an iSource, Mike Rosa, ex-CIO from iSource. We had Thierry Bonhomme, who's over from Paris. We actually ran. The great thing was we were able to have the guys live in the studio, the vast majority of them in the studio in our office in Dublin, and then a live audience, which is mostly made up of our own team, sitting in front of us, listening to the show, and then we had obviously you guys online. So yeah, it was a really, really good show. Really enjoyed it. There was a real high point though for me personally. Empower 2023 really pushed out the message around climate change, the right to repair. And we were delighted to be able to announce a sponsorship of an organization called This Spaceship Earth. This Spaceship Earth message is simple around climate change. It states that we are all crew on this spaceship, not passengers. We are all crew. And it is really, really, really important message to get out there. And there's some really interesting ebook that's just been published that you'll get to see. Hopefully, if you go on our website, you'll see all about it. But we also had Jan Hoogstrate from Free ICT Europe talking about what's been happening there. Yeah, so we saved the right to repair topic for the end. Because, well, why? Because it's kind of an explanation point on everything that we've been saying about questioning the motives and the outcomes. The outcomes the mega vendor-led decisions are creating for you as customers and all of us who participate in the industry. It's not good. We need to change what's happening out there, and the only way to change is as we say in this thing, be curious, be that healthy skeptic. So we don't want to be adding to the expense. We don't want to be adding to the environmental footprint. So we have to make decisions now. Today is the time. It's unhealthy for the environment for us to delay, and it's bad for your company's financial health. Richard Beaumont, our host on the day, he was talking about this. There are financial impacts on this, and this is where we're going to go on this show. We're going to take you back 1st of June to that conversation we had at the end, hosted by Richard Beaumont with myself, Jan Hoogstrate from Free ICT Europe, and co-founder of Spaceship Earth, Tim Rumage. I'll let you go there. It's a big topic. I hope you enjoy this session.
Okay, here we are. Final session. We're going to work out whether there's an unanswered question we haven't touched yet. But I said before we get going, it would be great just to get everyone introduced. Jan.
My name is Jan Hoogstrate, located in the Netherlands, working for Free ICT Europe as executive director and involved in the operation, also in our work in Brussels, connecting with the policymakers, etc.
Wonderful.
You met me earlier. Tomás O'Leary, CEO and founder of Origina. So delighted to be sitting here with my colleagues on this excellent topic.
And Tim.
I'm Tim Rumage. I'm a planetary ethicist, the Chief Science Officer of the Spaceship Earth, and Professor of Environmental Studies at Ringling College of Art and Design in Sarasota, Florida.
Well, a pleasure to have the three of you here. So, okay, this is kind of a weird one. We've had 4 presentations around what we can do to improve the way that we maintain and use our software. Now, here we are with Free ICT Europe, this Spaceship Earth, and Origina. And I've got to ask the question, okay, so what is the journey by which each of you have found yourselves in, that organization? And yeah, maybe, yours is an interesting one.
Well, yeah, so before I entered the world of IT, I was involved into the automotive sector, car parts, etc. And there, 20, 30 years ago, there was the whole development around right to repair for repair shops and body shops in cars. And at that time, there was made special EU legislation for that did protect the independent workshops. Then I moved into the IT, and all of a sudden I saw the same issues that were were discussed in the automotive sector to be also coming up because of the policies of the manufacturers in the IT world for the independent businesses. So that triggered me to say, hey, I've seen this before. So that was like, okay, is there a chance that we can move to the same direction and become active in Brussels, which is at the end what we did. But so that was the main trigger for me. The recognition from the policies of OEMs that are harming the functioning of the marketplace.
So manufacturing and a journey through, and Tim, if I may come to you next. I mean, I love the idea of a planetary ethicist. So how did you arrive at this spaceship?
David Huol, who co-founded the organization with me, would be a guest lecturer in my classes. And we started just talking about the status of the world as we saw it. He was doing a great deal of traveling. I've been doing a lot of research on the environment, and we were looking at the impacts humans were having that they were really unaware of, especially sort of the cumulative and ongoing effects. We see what we as an individual might do, but looking at the cumulative impact of this is really the issue here for us. That's where the urgency comes from. It's just seeing the massive change that we are all making inadvertently and not wanting to make that mess, but it's just happening. And so how to get people to think about what we could do instead of what the habits we're doing that are leading to a bad end.
Got it. So Jan, automotive OEMs seeing a problem, Free ICT Europe. Tim, travel, research, looking at impact, planetary-wide approach through Spaceship Earth. And the focal point where these two organizations have met somehow is Origina. How did that happen?
Complete accident, actually.
Oh, okay.
If the truth be known. We were creating a business in the data center repair industry out of the ashes of a previous company that was in partnership with IBM.
Right.
I wanted to find organizations that could help us, because we're now no longer aligned. And it's how I first met Jan at a conference in Amsterdam in 2011. We were only starting the business at the time. It was the year before we got their software business off the ground. And I started hearing stories that Jan mentioned there that had been previously impacting the automotive industry. I started to hear stories of unfair practices, the sort of things we've heard about over the course of today already. But worse, actually, subtle changes to contracts, changes to the rights of firmware on the hardware stack. That meant that if you bought the hardware, these are very expensive pieces of equipment, sometimes costing many millions each. That's why these aren't cheap equipment. That actually you didn't actually own it fully. You only owned the right to use it, but you didn't actually own it.
Wow.
So actually, at the end of you decided to dispose of it, you could not dispose of it without asking permission from the manufacturer. Can you just imagine?
No.
Well, actually, we can, because today, if it could, that's exactly what all the consumer goods manufacturers. So I could see this was going to happen. And that's what motivated me to get involved in initially free ICT, and obviously the supporting, obviously we are now doing of the Spaceship Earth. So yeah, that's how I got into it.
All right. So I'm gonna take your advice. I'm gonna be a healthy skeptic. And I work with a lot of organizations. They're all trying to tackle scope 3. They're all looking at their wider impact on the environment. You know, if I think about IT, okay, hardware I get. We've got mining to get the raw materials in the first place. We've got redundancy of equipment and perhaps bad disposal of it. We've got a multiplication of consumer devices that is largely out of control. So I understand that hardware in the IT domain is a problem, and a global problem. But software, I'm struggling to understand how software has an environmental impact. Tomás, what am I missing?
Well, you're not curious, for example, that on the theme of curiosity, but are you not curious how your phone over time, as you apply more software patches to it or updates, degrades and actually stops working? There's actually very little wrong with the hardware. It's the software that drives hardware obsolescence in many cases.
Right.
All right. That's the first thing. That's at a consumer level. At a business level, the issue is even worse, because actually in excess of 60, probably close to 65% of technology that's consumed on the planet is not consumed by you and us as consumers. It's consumed by businesses.
Right.
That's where it's actually consumed. That's these large data centers, these cloud infrastructures that businesses use to churn huge amounts of data. Ultimately, as consumers, we may be using it, but it's the software that is actually, the changes in the software that's driving the hardware changes fundamentally. If you go back to late 2019, early 2020, not that long ago, just before COVID, a story probably would have broken, except for what happened later with COVID, around Windows 7, a version of Windows that was coming end of life after many years of being in existence. This version was actually coming off life. There was one stage, there was 1.5 billion approximately devices around the world that Microsoft boasted that were using Windows at this particular version. And when it was coming end of life, which is their right to be entitled to stop supporting it, the problem is nobody else can. So intellectual property rights ensures the right to Microsoft own the rights to it for 70 odd years, depending on the jurisdiction. Yet it's 13 or 14 years later maximum, and they're going, we don't support this anymore. So what happens? Well, there was estimates that in October 2019, somewhere between 250 million and 400 million devices still were running that particular version of Windows.
Right.
And they were things like pretty much dumb devices in factory floors, not necessarily dumb, but just they were rudimentary, doing the same function, just the same function. Maybe devices in a hospital environment that were monitoring something, didn't need any major changes to it, but ATM machines.
Right.
Yes, ATM machines all around the world. What happened to those? They were pulled out of walls, they were taken out of factories, and they were thrown in landfill. That is an example of how impactful software is. Nothing to do with hardware. The hardware was perfectly able to continue for several years afterwards, but it had to be pulled out of the walls. Why would you need, in today's world, why would you need another new ATM machine?
Wow. Tim, you must have a perspective, an outlook upon the consequences of what we've just heard. I mean, how can we even quantify that impact at a global level?
There are a series of reports that do that. I mean, just talking about e-waste in general. In 2017, there were 44 million tons of e-waste. In 2021, there were 57.4 million tons, more than the weight of the Great Wall of China. We're looking at estimate in 2050 of there being 120 million tons. I mean, part of my perspective is I look forward. It's not just what has happened, but what is going to happen as demand for these resources grow. And if you want to think just about some odd economics, about 7% of the world's gold supply currently is in e-waste. There's more gold in e-waste per ton in e-waste than there is in a ton of gold ore. I mean, so the things have a physical value, they have a monetary value, and we can't keep hauling as we're doing right now 100 billion tons of raw materials out of the ground and think that that supply can just go on. And so any way that we want to have a growing economy means we're at a point now where we really need to shift and mimic what nature does and figure out how to recycle, repair and recycle. The concept of waste just has to go away.
Got it. Yeah, and this I think that's an excellent point. This idea of we're at the point where we have to mimic nature and truly repair and reuse what we've got. I mean, coming on your journey from automotive now into the ICT domain, do you see that tipping point happening now? And is anybody doing anything about it?
We're absolutely making progress.
Oh.
So what you saw that when IT came up and technology was coming up, it was just like, don't touch it. You need a specialist, everything. You need to be dependent. And of course, it's been proven that that's not the case. And now, especially in Europe, the European Commission wants to stimulate everything around making it more open, accessible, repairable, upgradable. Also another element, it's not so. IT is not only things that you can use, you can also improve, like you can do with your house or with your car or anything. We need to shift our way of thinking and move away, like, hey, we can do something with this. And I think that's one of the things that happened with the hardware side, which is now required to happen with the software side as well, because this is an asset. This is something that you own, and why can't you open it? Why can't you do with it what you want? There needs to be a certain level of protection, but we need to see it more and more as an asset, not a black box that is in a blind spot. And so we need to make sure that there are rules that if you own a software asset, okay, what are your rights? What can you do with it? And that you can make, as the owner, decisions around this.
Okay, so I think I've got a sense now that there's an iceberg that I was probably unaware of, and it's an iceberg that's hardware filled but software driven in that process. So Thomas, what happens when in my simple mind, the idea that we have a right to repair software so we can ensure continuity, because if it doesn't need to do anything else, we can just repair it and keep it running, because as you said, if it's in a dumb tool that's working fine, why do we need to do anything different? But I get the sense that the minute you start doing that, you are running directly into the business model of the software companies that are, ever seeking that progression. So what's your observation from the clients you speak to about that tipping point between the recognition that we have to act and we should have the right versus the pushback from perhaps the OEMs, as there was once in the automotive world, to say, well, actually, right to repair is a problem for us, so why should we cooperate? How do you observe that happening?
Yeah, well, I think you've got to first of all start with understanding that all of the cards are in the manufacturer's hands. There has been no rules. So when we talk about right to repair, it's a catch-all, and there are parts of our kind of community, I guess you'd call it, okay, speaking as a part of the right to repair movement, that push very specific legislation. But it's actually, in my opinion, it's a catch-all for a set of rules and just a kind of like rules of the road. There are no rules of the road at all, okay? I think the very first piece of any sort of legislation that came in that provided any rules to the technology industry is GDPR, right? That was just about about data protection. That was all it was about. Very, very small, very important area. It was the first time And it's caused consternation in the industry. Oh, with GDP, everybody's GDPR, and suddenly we all think it's a bad thing. When actually we need rules. There's rules in every other walk of life.
Yeah.
You know, there's rules about in this building, health and safety rules. We all have to deal with. I walk out the road, I have to wait till the green man to cross the road. I have to drive on a certain side of the road in this country, different sides of the roads in Jan and Tim's country. You know, these are the rules. You know, we don't question them, we accept them. There are none. Okay, there are absolutely no rules. They have made the rules, they've created. So what we now need to do is just take back some of that, not all of it. We're actually just looking for some of it. We're looking for fairness.
Okay.
That's what we're looking for. We're not, there's nothing fair about the current situation. So I don't think they can say anything, to be honest with you. There's nothing they can say because it's totally unfair. It's totally stacked. They have all the chips. And we're saying, give us some of the chips, please. We're saying, give us some of those chips. And that's our job as individuals to raise our voices. We talked about earlier and by being a part of the crew as opposed to being a passenger at the beginning of the show, at the top of the show. But my view on this is that we need to take the action as individuals, but also legislators. The government have been asleep at the wheel. Like that's what myself and Jan do when we're involved in free ICT. You know, they have totally abdicated their responsibility, and I think we need to push them to make certain rules that protect. Now, we can do our business without any rules. It doesn't need rules, but certain other parts of the business need rules.
Interesting, Tim. If I may come back just to explore this, it's interesting. Tomás mentioned GDPR, European legislation. It has affected everything globally because people touch and operate within European jurisdiction. German Supply Chain Act is about to have exactly the same effect, where a piece of legislation in one country actually will affect global companies in the way that they behave and they account. So, Tim, in this absence of anybody making the first move to restack the cards away from the OEMs, what's your thinking on how we as individuals or organizations could take that first step to make a change in the absence of any support from legislators? How would you tackle that?
I think part of it is we need to make consumers more aware of what the real options are. I mean, doing repair is a real option, or at least it should be, but we pretend that it's not. You know, I get a broken, my VCR breaks down and I'm told, well, the best thing you can do is buy a new one. I'm going like, no, I mean, I just need somebody to fix, one wire in the back, inside the black box, and I'm probably okay for another 4 years. So we need consumers to really sort of engage, and that'll force the economic change. As more people prefer to buy products that have these options, that prefer to buy options where they can do repair and use materials, products that have been recovered, then that changes the market. And all any of the business want to do is survive in the market. So, the consumers can drive the market. They just have to be aware of the fact that they can do that. And the fact that they're not asking questions is why there isn't a change. There's no support for it. So we need to educate the consumer. Yeah.
Right. So conscious consumers
right.
will drive the train through awareness. Right. Interesting.
And the right to repair give people a framework.
Right.
I guess that's the good part about it.
Yeah.
So these legislative bills that are going around has got giving people a framework.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, we are where we are. We haven't got the legislation to drive the push. We have a recognition of urgency. There is clearly a problem. Right to repair, as you say, is a framework that can do it. But what I'd love to do is just as a final question to the three of you is, we're all about practical steps to make a difference. And I'd just love to get, if you were going to give one takeaway, one piece of advice that, you could tell our audience, just do this tomorrow or today, and you will start to have the positive impact that we're talking about. Yeah, what would be your one thing?
Doesn't need to be one line. Huh?
No.
Okay. It's crucial that we open or copy behavior and thinking that we have already to the business in IT environment. Yeah, we all use second-hand products privately. Or your home is already secondary used. Or secondary cars. It's already there. You know, some of us even have relationships that are. So, and if you're driving in your Tesla, you already see, you know, things are coming together. That's a computer on wheels. And you see issues that we have in the IT environment, also coming back into the automotive. So there are a lot of things that are already there. It's just we don't think about it. We just accept it as it. Put question marks. Why should I replace this? Why should I not repair this? Why is the big question, I think, that you did, because we are just conditioned to stay in a certain modus. And that's driven by manufacturers, by vendors, because they need to keep the numbers up. And that's the big thing. And because the biggest message is really, okay, if you see the IT spending projections for software and hardware, it's all going up. But it needs to go down with, 30, 40, even maybe 50% to reach to decoupling, to save the resources, bring them back to a level that's acceptable. Just so put the question mark, the why, into your thinking.
Tim, what would be your one piece of advice?
Well, I'm going to agree with Jan on part of this. One of it is the question is, are we asking ourselves good questions about any of the things that we're doing? For us, the four of us, our age, in our ages, the focus of our education was, did you get the right answer? Now it's about, did you actually ask the right question? And that's what we're not really doing these days. We're still stuck with, this was the habit. This was the right answer a few years ago. Let's just keep doing that. And, and that time has passed. Everything we do every day has a positive or negative impact on the environment. The question is, what impact do you want to have at the end of the day? Be positive, be negative. And, actually you can start anywhere because it is all connected. And so anything that you do to make it a little bit better is how it goes. Because all the problems we got now all started very little at the individual level. It's just the cumulative impact that has given it the drama that it has today.
Wonderful. Tomás?
I'd like to bring it back to what Thierry Bonhomme actually said at the opening session earlier. He talked about how did we get into the situation when Brendan asked him, and he said it was this about 25 years ago, the CEOs and CIOs, and suddenly everything was about no control over IT and the rolling out of IT, and it was like everybody had to do it. It was consumption, and nobody even appreciated any of the things we're talking about today. And I think. And our audience here is a business audience, and people who work in large businesses. And what I'd be asking to do is, don't expect somebody else to fix this problem for you. You've got to fix this problem yourself. You've got to be curious. You've got to have that healthy skeptic mindset. And that's what I'll be asking people to do.
Wonderful. Tim, Jan, Tomás, thank you very much indeed for sharing your insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.